You carry this in your pocket maybe or in your purse every day. It's the testimony of what we say we believe. It's on our coins. It's in songs that we sing. It's on police cars, on fire engines. It's on courthouses and schools. It's literally the public testimony of our faith. It's been on every gold coin, every silver dollar, every half dollar, every quarter since 1908. It's been on every penny since 1909, on every dime since 1916, and on all currency since 1938. It is the motto of this country since 1956. It is the phrase, "In God we trust." In God we trust. Now, I have no way of knowing the hearts of everyone in this country, but I suspect in many ways that's false advertising. In many cases, I think it would be more accurate to say, like, in my bank account I trust, or in my education I trust, in my own wisdom I trust, in today's world, in AI I trust. And for teenagers, the way things are going, teens all over the country, it's in TikTok I trust. Today's teens, believe it or not, this generation has more faith in TikTok influencers than they do the God of the universe. Fasten your seatbelts, parents, because if that's the wisdom they're leaning on, man, it's a scary thought to think of our future. Today's life verse, we're in this series called Verses to Live By, verses that you submitted and wanted exegete. It comes from the book of Proverbs, chapter 3, verses 5 through 6. It is thought of by a lot of scholars to be the thesis of the book of Proverbs. It's been turned into hymns and choruses, and there's no doubt that some of you in this room have this verse memorized. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Will you bow your heads and pray with me today? Father, may the words of my mouth and the meditation of our hearts be acceptable in your sight, O Lord, our rock and our Redeemer. Amen. Now, before we dig into the meat that is the content of this verse, we need to understand the context of this verse. The background details are going to help us understand, interpret, and apply this verse to live by to our lives. So, wisdom is the theme of this text. It's the theme of the entire chapter. It's the theme of actually the entire book of Proverbs. Proverbs is a book of wisdom that's a part of a greater collection of books known as wisdom literature in the Bible. That's the genre. And King Solomon is the author. So he's the wisest person to ever live. As a matter of fact, in 1 Kings chapter 3, you can read the story. It's very early on in King Solomon's reign, and God is super impressed by how Solomon's leading and the humility that he has and his trust in God. And so he comes to Solomon and he says, "Hey, listen, I'm super impressed by what you're doing. I will grant you whatever you want. Just whatever it is that you wish, let me know and I will give it to you." And Solomon, the Bible says, asks for wisdom. He could ask for anything. And God is so impressed that Solomon asked for wisdom that God said, "You know what? Because you asked for wisdom and not money and not power, I'm going to give you all that other stuff too." He's the wisest to ever live. And he's writing this book, this chapter. He doesn't write all of Proverbs, but a lot of it. But he's writing this section to one of his kids. Chapter 3, verse 1 says, "My son, do not forget my teaching, but keep my commandments in your heart." So unlike Ecclesiastes, which is written when Solomon was a senior citizen, Proverbs he pens around 970 BC. At this point, he's just a young king. And when you look closely, by the way, at the first 10 verses, there's a structure in the book of Proverbs in this section that starts to emerge. As you realize that the wisest to ever do it was very intentional about how he writes this book. So if you read the first 10 verses, you see in the odd verses there are instructions. In the even verses, there are promises. So in the first 10 verses, you have 5 couplets. Odd verses, instructions. The even verses give promises. Let's look at this. We can read the first 10 verses together. Proverbs chapter 3 says this. "My son," here's the instruction, "do not forget my teaching, keep my commandments in your heart." Then the promise, "For they will prolong your life many years and bring you prosperity." The instruction, verse 3, "Let love and faithfulness never leave you. Write them, bind them around your neck, write them on the tablet of your heart." Then the promise says, "You will win favor and a good name in the sight of God and men." Our verse for today, "Trust in the Lord with all of your heart, lean not into your own understanding, in all your ways acknowledge Him." That's the instruction. Then the promise, "He will make your paths straight." Verse 7, "Do not be wise in your own eyes, fear the Lord and shun evil. That's the instruction. This will bring health to your body and nourishment to your bones. The pattern continues. Honor the Lord with your wealth and the first fruits of all your crops. Then your barns will be filled to overflowing, and your vats will brim with new wine. That's verses 1 through 10. There's another unique feature of these 10 verses we just read. You're going to notice in verses 1, verses 3, verses 7, in the instructions you have the do not and then the do. The do not and then do, right? So it says like in verse 7, do not be wise in your own eyes. That's the do not, then the do. Fear the Lord and shun evil. In verse 5, it is reversed. You have the do not and then, or the do and then the do not, which indicates that this is most likely the thesis of this section, and not only that, very likely the book of Proverbs in itself. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all of your ways acknowledge Him, and He will make your paths straight. Now it's time to unpack this verse. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. So trust God. With everything in you, trust God. So the question we got to ask is, why would Solomon tell his son this? I think it's because of this reason. Solomon was a son with a dad he knew and then a granddad he knew of. In fact, most scholars believe when King David writes this, it's around 970 BC. That's the year most scholars believe that Solomon wrote this, and the year that they believe King David died. Which tells you what? When Solomon's writing this, he's got family on his mind. When he's writing this, he writes it to his son who would one day be king as the son of a former king who had just died. Does that make sense? That's the environment that he's writing this in. And the number one message that Solomon wants his son to receive is this: trust God. Trust God. Trust God. Why? Because he had a dad who did and a granddad who did not. So Solomon was king number 3 in Israel's history. The first king that Israel had was a guy named King Saul. That was Solomon's grandfather. And before them, Israel had no king. And they came to God like, we really want a king. And God's like, no, you don't. They're going to tax you. Your sons are going to go off to war. And the people are like, no, we want a king like every other nation. So God gives them a king, and his name is Saul. And the Bible says he was prominent. That means he was built, he was chiseled, he was tall, he was kingly, he was good looking. He had that wow factor. And early on in his reign, things were going well for Saul. He was following God's rules, he was obeying, but then the power went to his head, and Saul started making a mess of things. They were going to battle against the Philistines one day. And King Saul was really eager to get off to battle, and so he didn't wait for the priests. He storms into the tabernacle himself and does what is illegal to the Jewish community, like an aberration in God's eyes, and offers his own sacrifice. That was for the Levites to do, and the Levites only, the priest and no one else. Blows right by God's commands. Then they're going to take the army and go to battle against the Amalekites. God says, wipe the whole country out, wipe everyone out, kill everyone and everything, every animal, even everything. He kills everyone except the livestock and keeps the livestock for himself. And then what he does is he builds a monument in his own honor. He starts to consult mediums and spirits instead of God's wisdom. Listen to this. 1 Solomon 16:14. This was the result of King Saul's lack of trust in God. The Spirit of the Lord departed from Saul, and an evil spirit from the Lord troubled him instead. So that was Saul, the first king in Israel's history. And then there was David, the second king. David had his rough moments. He had his warts for sure, but he always came back to God. He killed Goliath. He routed the Philistines. He brought Israel to a place of prominence. He was called a man after God's own heart, and not because he always did the right thing, but because he always came back to the right person. He always came back to God. So here you have his granddad, the king, who's an abject failure, ignores God's wisdom, builds a statue of himself to himself, seeks a medium for wisdom, is tormented by an evil spirit, and then dies in shame in the battlefield. That's his grandfather. Why? He didn't trust God. And then you have David with an accomplishment list, a mile long, some failures along the way, but God blessed him and honored him and grew the kingdom through him. Why? He trusted God with all of his heart. And so now Solomon is throwing the football around with his kid who will one day be king. And he knows that before too long, Solomon's going to join his dad. His dad 6 feet underground, and so he leaves this all important instruction to his son. He goes so far as to reverse the structure of the writing in the text to let his son know that more than anything else you do, above all else, trust in the Lord with all of your heart. Trust in the Lord with all of your heart. One day there was this young man that had an unlucky moment, fell off of a cliff. But he was lucky enough to catch onto a branch that was protruding out of the cliff. So he's dangling there, and he starts screaming for help. And this is the conversation that ensued. He's screaming, "Help me! Is anyone up there? Is anyone up there?" And then a voice replied, "I am here. I am the Lord. Do you believe me?" And the person dangling from the cliff said, "Yes, Lord, I believe you. But I really can't hang up here much longer." To which the Lord replied, "That's all right. If you really believe, you have nothing to worry about. I will save you. Just let go of the branch." There was a pause, and then the man dangling from the cliff said, "Is anyone else up there?" I don't know about you, but that is a picturesque description of some of the times of my life where I've been that guy, and I'm facing, name that difficult situation, and like you're hanging onto a thread, and I know what God wants me to do. His word is clear about that, but doing it and trusting that if I do what his word says, if I do what the Spirit tells me to do, that I can leave the results in God's hands. Listen, friends, that's not always easy. That's not always easy. Leaving the results up to God, trusting God. Those of you who've been here for a few years at Journey Church, it's the last 5 so years, it's not always been an easy road. Like when I come in here now on Sunday mornings and I walk through the halls, I get excited because I see babies, I see toddlers running around, and I see volunteers serving their hearts out. Students on Sunday evenings are here every Sunday evening destroying the premises for Jesus. And adults are engaging in small groups, and servants going on mission trips. Like, God is blessing this joint, and I'm so excited about it. Every Sunday I come in, I get so excited just to see you. It's awesome. There was a 3-year stretch where we had navigated the merge. There were 2 churches, a Gateway Bible Church, Hope Christian Fellowship, and they decided to merge and become one. And that 2-year process was hard work. And then coming out of the merge, and we were all excited, we began to face a leadership struggle that involved multiple long, hard meetings, painful meetings, a pastor leaving, members struggling after that. Like, it was hard. I had people that I trust in, that I connected with in ministry, like that don't attend here. And I had gone to them throughout the process, and they were praying for me. And I had some people come to me, and this is what they said to me. They said, "Leave. Just leave. This isn't good for you. Let someone else take care of this mess. You're all tangled up in it." I'm not joking. I had people that I love and respect that's what they said to me. And I'm not going to lie. Like, I knew in a lot of ways that would be the easiest thing for me to do. And it would save me the headaches and the heartaches and the soul aches. But the problem was, every time I prayed about it, "God, what should I do?" The message was clear. Stay and lead. Stay and love. Stay and trust me. And it wasn't always easy. And I made some mistakes along the way. There were times that I doubted. There were times I wondered, "God, will it always be this hard? Are we ever going to get on the other side of this mess?" But God called me. Do you know, by the way, who had a horrible calling in the Bible? There's this guy named Jeremiah. Like, parents, don't name your kid Jeremiah. So God goes to Jeremiah and says, "So here's the deal. I want you to be my pastor to the people. I want you to be my mouthpiece. You're going to be the prophet. You're going to speak to the people for me." And Jeremiah's like, "Okay." And then God says, "Oh, so this is what's going to happen as a result. For 40 years, you're going to teach and preach and share my word." Jeremiah's like, "I got it." And then he says, "And there's not going to be one single convert, not one single baptism. No one's going to listen to you. In fact, most of them will want to kill you, and then you'll die." Like, that was his calling. Like, what? Who signs up for that? Here's what Jeremiah had to say about trusting God. After receiving that calling, "Blessed is the one whose trust is in the Lord, whose confidence is in Him. They will be like a tree planted by the water that sends out its roots by the stream. It does not fear when heat comes. Its leaves are always green. It has no worries in a year of drought and never fails to bear fruit." Those are people that trust God. In other words, even when things are terrible, especially when they are, Trust God. Obey his word. Listen to his voice. Do what he says. Trust God with all of your heart. And what? Lean not on your own understanding. The word lean that is used here is the same word that's used to describe what Saul did on the battlefield when he took his own life. And he physically leaned onto his sword. So the idea here is putting your weight, whether physically or metaphorically, on something. So what Solomon is saying is, don't put your weight on your own logic, your own reasoning skills, your own wisdom. Fools do that. This is a profound statement, really. None of it was coming from me, okay? Because truth be told, yeah, maybe you're like, we chose the wrong church. I'm not really that wise. I give a lot of wisdom to my kids. Often I give wisdom to my kids. And I'm going to confess, plenty of times it backfires. Like I asked Dryden's permission. She's in Pittsburgh. She's coaching last fall. I asked her permission to tell this story. But it was a couple years ago. I think it was like her junior year of high school, maybe her senior year. I don't even remember. But she came to me and she was all panicked. And because she had never really been on like this real date, had a real boyfriend or anything like that. And so she comes to me, she's like, Papa, Papa, Papa. I'm like, what? This guy from Battlefield High School, he's an athlete there. He reached out to me, messaged me and says he wants to go on a date with me. Right? And she showed me a picture. He's tall, strong, all that kind of stuff. I'm like, well, sounds like a win situation. She's like, I don't know. What should I do? And I'm like, well, you should go out with the guy. He asked you out. What does he want to do? Well, he said we could go to like Safeway and we could get like ice cream from the freezer. And then there's these seats outside of Dunkin' Donuts in Bristol, and we could just sit out there and eat ice cream. I said, that sounds pretty chill to me. That's an awesome idea. You should go for it. And then Dryden says to me, but what if he's only, I don't even know the guy, looking for action? Right? So I said to her, there's only one way to find out. Yeah, it's great parenting advice right there. So my ice cream Safeway, come on, like what can happen? So she's like, yeah, go do it. All right, we need to get her out there in the real world. And so Dryden goes on his date with this dude, and she shows up thinking they're going to walk into Safeway, get ice cream, and they're going to sit outside in those little chairs outside of Dunkin', and like Mary Poppins and Dick Van Dyke would just like eat ice cream together or something. It didn't go down like that. Like a half hour later, that's not long, Dryden comes running into the door. She's in tears. Papa, you're never going to believe it. What? I'm like, he didn't want ice cream. I said, what do you mean? He said, just get in my car. And I said, what do you want? I sat in his car. And then what happened? And then he leaned in and tried to kiss me. I said, and then what did you do? Well, I stiff-armed him. And I looked at him and I said, girl? You called him girl? That's what you did? Yeah, that's my Dryden. She's amazing. Let me tell you what. So if I were to tell you from my experience that I've learned not to lean on my own understanding, you would probably go, duh, I'm not leaning on your understanding either. This is Solomon. He's the wisest to ever do it. Like wisdom was his superpower. Do you realize that? There's this great story in 1 Kings chapter 3 where these two moms, and they kind of think they live in the same like close quarters or whatever, because they fall asleep one night and they've got these newborns. And one of the moms in the middle of the night, she wakes up and her newborn baby has died. Like Sid's like died, and she wakes up in the middle of the night and she's like, oh no. And then she sees this other mom with a baby that is like just in close proximity, but same age baby. She goes and swaps out the babies. You can read it like it's craziness, right? She takes the baby that has died, and the other mom's asleep, and she puts it next to the mom and takes the alive baby and gets back in bed and goes to sleep. The other mom wakes up in the morning and she looks at the baby, and her baby's dead. And then she looks a little closer. She's like, wait a sec, that's not my baby. I know my baby. And she says to the other mom, hey, you swapped babies. And the other mom's like, I didn't do that. This is my baby. I know my baby. And so they have this huge baby war. It's a big mess. And so the whole case is brought before Solomon the king. And so they walk in with the baby, right? And she's like, this is my baby. And the mom's like, she stole my baby. And Solomon's like, I have the perfect solution. And they're like, what are you going to do, right? And then he says to one of his servants, go get my sword. So the servant goes and grabs the sword, and Solomon says, bring the baby, lay it on the table here, and what we're going to do, ladies, is we are going to cut the baby in half. You can't decide who's, actually owns the baby. You'll both get half a baby, and then you can walk away happy, right? That was the solution, right? And so what do you think happened? Well, Well, the mom, who it was actually her baby, thinks she did. She's like, no, don't do that. Never do that. She can have her. She can have her. She can have the baby. Don't, Solomon, please no, please no, please no. That's not a solution. And the mom who stole the baby was like, you know what? Yeah, I think that's pretty even. That's a good solution. Solomon knew instantly who was the real mom, right? Like, people would travel from all over the world, kings and queens, to sit at his feet and listen to his insight and wisdom and understandings. That guy, not this guy, that guy said, lean not on your own understanding. The wisest person to ever do it said, don't lean on the wisest person to ever do it. And why? Because even at our best, even in our wisest moments, we can't see what God sees. And our wisdom pales in comparison to Him. So we can look at any situation we're facing. We can evaluate it from every single angle. We can consider every unintended consequences, do a full SWOT analysis, and make what we think is a rock-solid decision, and it's the wrong decision. Why? Because we're fallible, we are biased about ourselves, and we are limited. And we don't know ourselves as well as we think we do. I mean, that's the bottom line. Everyone wanted Solomon's opinion on things. His family, his magistrates, the Queen of Sheba, like everyone wanted Solomon's opinion on things. Here's what Solomon said about his own opinion. A fool finds no pleasure in God's understanding, but delights in airing his own opinion. And do you know who learned this lesson the hard way? This is weird stuff. Solomon himself. So later on in Solomon's life, Solomon writes a book called Ecclesiastes. By the way, if you're filled with joy and happiness in life and you want to be depressed instead, go read it. Here's why. Solomon has gained so much knowledge and understanding, he started trusting his own logic instead of God's. He blew right by his own Proverbs 3:5 warning. God said, don't marry foreign women. They'll lead you astray. And did Solomon trust God's wisdom? Nope. He leaned on his own understanding. He thought to himself, the political marriages will make the nation stronger. And what was the result? Idolatry. They brought their foreign gods into the palace, and he started worshiping them, and Ashtoreth and Molech, and the kingdom was divided as a result of him leaning on his own understanding. So what should we do instead if we don't want to make the same mistake? Read this book. Read this book. Often read this book. And the commands and the wisdom in this book, actually do it. Like if this book says, do this, do it. If this book says, don't do it, don't do it. Because you're not going to know God's wisdom unless you're in this book. And then, not just that, pray. And when I say pray, I don't mean just talk to God and then leave. Like, do you know God speaks? In John, Jesus said, I know my sheep know me, and when I speak, they hear my voice. What we do is we go to God, right, blah, 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 this, please God, yeah, thank you very much, I got to go. We leave. Like the discipline of listening and prayer is one of the most important disciplines of all. So don't just tell God things, listen. Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding, and then this, in all of your ways, acknowledge Him. By the way, students, when your parents tell you to acknowledge someone, right, what does it mean? At a base level, it means, like, you know them, wave, do something like that. When I was in middle school and I went out in public with my family, it was my goal to walk at least 50 feet in front of them so that no one knew I was associated with them, and I wanted to avoid acknowledging them. The word translated in this text has a much deeper sense than just like saying, like, oh yeah, I admit I know you. Like, it's not saying like, yeah, I believe there's a God. It's not that at all. The word translated acknowledge in the text is the Hebrew word yada. And that word in Hebrew carries with it a rich sense of an intimate, experiential knowledge. It implies like recognition and submission, active engagement with God in all aspects of life, not just like this intellectual awareness. So to acknowledge, according to the text, yada, to acknowledge is to deliberately align your decisions and your actions with God's will. To deliberately align your decisions and your actions with God's will. In all of your ways, in other words, purposefully and intentionally and willingly submit to him. That's the idea. This doesn't happen accidentally. It takes hard work. It takes hard work. And I feel like to a degree this is where Christianity has gone wrong, modern Christianity, because we want it to be easy. We want it to be easy. And when it comes down to salvation, it is. Like, because God, Jesus, they did all the work. Like, God sent his son, Jesus died, he sacrificed, he took our punishment. We just go, yes, I love you. Can I get in? And they're like, yeah, you're in. Like, when it comes to salvation, it's that simple, it's that easy. That's where easy ends for Christians. In all your ways, acknowledge him. In all your ways. Submit to him. In all your ways, yield to him. Not in some of your ways, not in some areas, not in just certain paths or parts of your life. All. Paul put it this way. You are not your own. You were bought with a price. Right? So, therefore, I got your body. It says, so, like, your body, not your body. It belongs to him. It belongs to him. See, you don't get to just wear whatever you want and do whatever you want with it and put whatever you want in it because you're not doing it to your own body. You are doing it to his. It was bought with a price. Your calendar, not your calendar. It was bought with a price. It belongs to him. On Christmas Day, I get a call that Lamont's had a house fire. Like the next day, like Ron shows up and David Koo shows up and they abandon whatever Christmas things they were doing and they just like they got to be there. Why? And there were a bunch of other people. I just named a couple that were there serving. Why? Their calendar was bought with a price. So when the need came up, they were there. Why be here on Sunday morning? Your calendar was bought with a price. It's important. God said, Hebrews 10:25, don't give up meeting together. Get together all the more as you see the day approaching. Commit to this. Why? It's not your calendar. It belongs to him. It was bought with a price. Your bank account. Oh, now we're getting personal. It was bought with a price. So here's what that means. When you're spending, you're not just spending your money. You're spending his money. Like, could you imagine if you were at home one day and, like, you're making the bed and, like, you turn around and, like, Jesus is in your room, like, the physical Jesus. He's right there. And you're like, oh. And then he, like, for some reason, he walks up to you. He's like, hey, I have this $1 million. It's my money here, but I'm giving it to you to use. And he, like, hands you $1 million. What are you going to do with it? You're going to spend it lavishly on yourself? You're going to gamble it away? You're going to add to the wardrobe of clothes in your closet you already don't wear? Like, what would you do with it knowing he's now going to watch you spend his money? It's no different. Because it's not your money. It was bought with a price. In all of your ways, all of your ways, all of your ways, submit to him. How are we doing with that? So, I'll illustrate it this way. Like a month and a half ago, Soleil and I took a trip. She had the JVA National Tournament in Louisville, Kentucky. And so I told Soleil when we drive to this tournament, I want to, if time allows and it's at the right time of day, I want to stop at my alma mater, Kentucky Christian University. I want to stop and show her my campus and take her around. We had, on the way back from a trip earlier, we drove by the campus on like I-64, but it was like 3 in the morning. So we took the exit and I drove her around campus. That's about all we could do. I haven't been on campus in like 25 years. I graduated in 2000. And so I'm like, if we have time, and we made good time. And so we're down I-64, and we're right near the exit, and my heartbeat like is starting to beat real big in my chest. We pull onto campus, and I'm like, for whatever reason, I'm just nervous and excited, and I hadn't been there. And all these memories come flooding back, and we park in front of Lusby Center. That's where the gymnasium is, where our championship banners are hung. And so I'm like, oh, we got to go in there. It's like in the middle of the day. It's like, I don't know, like 3 o'clock, 4 o'clock in the afternoon. So I'm like, we can do this. So we get out, because we know buildings are going to be open. And so we get out, and we go into Lusby Center, and we're in there, and I can barely speak. I'm so excited and like just this like wow, just like the memories, like I said, are hitting me. And I look over to the left, and like the main dining hall is over there. And so and there's a lady sitting at a table, and she just saw me like looking like lost. And so she's like, "Excuse me, can I help you?" And I said, and I don't know why I asked her. I said, "Listen, I graduated here in like 2000." And I said, by chance, is there someone here that was here way back then?" And the lady at the says, well, Brad Green is still here. I'm like, Brad Green? He's still here? Are you kidding me? Brad was the biggest fanboy. Like, he would always sit in the front row at the games, and he ran the entire, like, food services industry at Kentucky Christian when I was there. And the lady said, yeah, he's in the kitchen now with his daughter who's now graduated from college, and she's helping him. And I'm like, what? She's like, go say hi. So Soleil and I, and Soleil knows she's here. We go in through the kitchen, and then we're going back to where the cooking area is, and they call for Brad. And they're like, Brad, somebody's here to see you. I haven't seen this dude in 26 years. I would never have recognized him. Not for a second would I have recognized that guy. If we had walked down the street and I'm like, slap, nope, wouldn't have. He walks around the corner, and he sees me, and he looks at me, and he goes, Rancourt! Rancourt! And he runs over, and he gives me a massive bear hug, and listen, when I tell you, this is the greatest moment of my life, I mean it. So Soleil is over here beside me. And so I'm like, this is my daughter, Soleil. We're on the way to Louisville. She's got a volleyball tournament. She's a senior. She's graduating. She's getting ready to go off to college, right? And he looks at Soleil, and he goes, so this is your dad? This is your dad. And he goes, your dad is a legend. National champion. He's like, this is how he's like, 2 different sports. They did articles on him. I stand by, and I'm just like, I'm just going to let this moment go on, right? That's your dad. He's favorite. Like, he's just going on and on and on, right? And at the end of the conversation, when he finally stops speaking truth, I said, yeah, but like Soleil just got a scholarship to go D1 for volleyball, full ride, NIL money, the works. And he looks at Soleil and he goes, how many championships you got? Your dad's got, he was going, I put him around thinking. But here's the funny thing about all of that. Like Soleil got this scholarship to go play at Buffalo. That's why I'm wearing this shirt. Bulls, go Bulls, right? And she's nervous about going. You want to know why? I played D2, just so you know, which is fine. D2 Christian, whatever, Christian college, D2, I had a life outside of sports. I got to go and do other things and hang with friends because it's cool, but they didn't. I had a church that I pastored at the same time, and when you're Division I and you get a full ride, let me tell you what, you are not your own. You were bought with a price, and so she knows the second she shows up on campus, her body belongs to them. Her mind, she's got to get good grades, belongs to them. Her time belongs to them. Full ride. She's not her own. She was bought with a price. That's how it works at the D1 level. That's kind of the concept here. Have you handed the keys of your life over to God? Or are there parts of your life where you're like, God, you can have this and you can have this, but this part over here, no, you don't get that. In all your ways, acknowledge Him, and He will direct your path. And He will make your paths straight, whatever way you want to read it. Some translations say path straight, some say direct your path, but here it is. In other words, if you give Him the keys, you can trust Him to get you where He wants you to go. If you give Him the keys to your life, you can trust Him, He's a great Uber driver, to get you where He wants you to go. You know, probably the number one question I faced as a pastor in my life, and Cal, you've pastored, and Steve, is this: how do I figure out God's will for my life? For all the years of pastoring, that is the number one question I've gotten from people in my life. How do I figure out God's will for my life? This is how. I'm just going to answer it once so I never face the question again. It's brilliant. Submit and let Him direct. Submit and let Him direct. The problem most of us have is this: we want the direction without or before the submitting. We want God's direction without or before the submitting. I had a friend, not going to name the person because they might be listening, But they felt like God was giving them a silent treatment. You felt that before. You're like, man, God is being silent, and I'm praying, and I want direction, and I'm praying, and I'm not hearing anything. And so they come to me, and I knew, because I know this person well, they had gone through a very difficult situation with a member of their family, and it was hard. And so I asked the person, have you forgiven them yet? Have you forgiven them yet? Are you still angry? Are you still filled with bitterness about what they did? And to the person's credit, they were honest. They're still angry. They're still bitter. They're still harboring all these negative thoughts about the person. So what was the problem? Matthew 6:15 was the problem. Matthew 6:15, Jesus said, if you don't forgive people in your life who sin against you, your heavenly Father won't forgive you. So you want direction, right? But there was a part of your life you weren't willing to submit. You want direction without submission. Here's the deal, friends. If you want God to direct you, submit, and He will direct your path. Submit first, receive directions later. Submit first, receive directions later. Do you remember who Solomon's writing to? We talked about it early on. Do you remember who Solomon's writing to? He's writing to one of his sons, right? He's writing to his kid who will one day be king. He's leaving behind his wisdom so that when his son is on the throne, things will go well. And he'll lead the right way. And he'll stay on the right path. That's why he's writing it. Do you know who Solomon's son is that took the throne? Rehoboam. Rehoboam. Okay, think about the wisdom. Solomon's writing to his king. He will direct, trust God, all that kind of stuff. Rehoboam. Do you know what his first act as king was? Rehoboam, Solomon's kid who takes the throne. His first act as king is this. He's trying to figure out what to do. He's never been king before. So he's like, what should I do? So he gathers around him all of the elders of the nation, right? The elders, the spiritual leaders. And Solomon put in place. So he gathers the elders and he says, hey, I want to know what I got to do to get off to a good start. And the elders, you know what they tell him? Solomon in his old age was a grumpy old man. And he raised the taxes and was all consumed about building these things. And he was working the people too hard. You want these people to love you and honor you and follow you for the rest of your kingship. Here's what you do. You lay off on the taxes. Ease the burden. Take the constraints Solomon put on these people and just lighten the load. If you do that, they will follow you and honor you for a lifetime. That's what the elder said. You know what Rehoboam did? He looked at them as like, all right, old people, out, exit left. And then he turns to his posse, his group of young friends, his besties. And he's like, hey, what would you guys do? And they're like, forget what they said. The taxes, we're going to raise them even more. The work we're going to require 10 times what my dad did. And he put such a burden on the people, it split the kingdom in half. The kingdom became divided. And not only that, he brought male cult prostitutes into the temple. He did all kinds of evil things. And it ruined the nation of Israel. That's crazy. That's crazy. And so what does this have to do with us? He was a terrible king. Even though God had left him the instructions to be a great king. He was a terrible king. He was awful. He was horrible. He had the instructions to be one of the greatest kings in Israel's history. And guess what he did? He ignored them. And what does this have to do with us? We possess the wisdom of God. We hold it in our hands. We can pull it up on our tablets, on our phones. We can know it inside and out, memorize it. But the problem is, God's not going to make you obey it. That choice comes down to you. That choice comes down to you. So imagine you work for a company. And we're going to close with this. And the owner of the company, who's the president of the company, gathers you and his best employees, the ones he trusts the most, and he brings you into a room and he says, here's the deal. I need to travel out of the country for a while. I need to take an extended leave of absence, but I want to make sure that when I'm gone, everything goes smoothly and the company thrives. And so he says to you and the other trusted employees, he says, look, I'm going to leave, and while I'm gone, I want you to pay close attention to the business. You manage things while I'm away. But he says, you don't have to stress or worry because I will give you instructions. I will write you regularly so that you know exactly what you need to do, so when I come back, everything's in great shape, right? And so he looks at them and he says this to them, and everyone agrees. They give him the thumbs up. We're good. You go. Do your thing. Take care of business. We got this. We got this. And so during that time, the owner, the president, kept his word. He wrote letters, and he's put them in the mail, and he sent to the company telling them exactly what to do, exactly what the expectations are, his desires, his concerns, everything he wanted to make sure it got done. He said it in letters. And so finally, he returns. It's been 2 years. And when he walks up to the front door of his company, he looks in the weeds have like grown up and taken over the flower bed. And he looks over to the left, and there's like a window that's like broken on the front of the building. And he walks in, and he finds the gal sleeping at the desk. And he goes down the hall, and he hears like loud noise blaring from the rooms. And he sees people just horsing around and not caring. And the business has not made money. It's suffered a great loss. And so he's looking around, and he's frustrated, and he's confused, and he's wondering like, you ruined my business. How did this happen? So he gathers everyone, the same group around again, and he looks at them, and he's like, what happened? What happened? Didn't you get my letters? And so what do you say? You're like, oh, yeah, of course we got your letters. We even bound them in a book. We memorized them. In fact, we have letter study once a week, every Sunday. You know what? Those are really great letters. I think the president would then look at them and go, but wait, what did you do, though, about the instructions? And no doubt the employees would have to look at him and say, well, we didn't really do anything with them, but we read every one. That's Rehoboam. Is that you? We've been given the wisdom of God. We have it in our hands. Or on our phones and tablets. We have the ability to read it every single day. And we gather on Sundays to read it together. The question is, what will you do with what it says? Trust in the Lord with all your heart. Lean not on your own understanding. In all your ways, acknowledge Him. And then He will direct your path.